Hello, this is another video on the BusinessWorks Container Edition on the AWS Marketplace series. In this video, we're actually looking at the single AMI option. So in the previous videos, we actually set up an ECS cluster, we extended our Docker image, we actually deployed an application onto our ECS cluster. In this video, we're actually going to just deploy it as a single AMI. So this is maybe you want to do some simple basic testing. Just deploying it as an AMI makes it a lot easier. You don't have to worry about setting up all these, the auto scaling and all these different clusters, and also the cost is a lot less when you just use a single AMI. So if you just go back to your marketplace and you just search up BusinessWorks Container Edition, you come back to the page, and then if you hit continue, it'll just bring you up to the launch page. So once again, like I said before, you didn't have accepted the terms and conditions. That was what we did in one of the previous videos. But once you've done that, it's just a matter of making sure that you have the region, whatever region you want to deploy in, deployment options, so in this case, a single AMI, and then you just say launch with EC2 console. So what I'm going to do is US East. I'm just going to click on that. It's going to bring up me to my management console. So now I get to choose what sizing I want to use. In this case, I'm just going to do an M3 large. I do suggest something in the large, either M4, M3 large, XL, sizing wise, to make sure that you just have enough space for everything, because you don't want to actually deploy and then realize, oh, I don't have enough space, or I don't have enough memory to actually process what I'm trying to do. So then you go to configure, and if this is the first time you're doing it, it's the first time I'm doing it, you can actually just leave these to network. It's default subnet, I don't really care. Just enable a public IP, so you want to have it accessible. And then AMI role. So you're probably not going to have an AMI role for meter pricing unless you've actually used something from the marketplace before. So if you have, then you can actually just choose an existing AMI role and just select that. But if you don't, just say automatically create, and you need to type in a name here. So I'm just going to do metering role BWC just so I know what it's for. So add storage. I can choose how much space I want to put onto here. I'm just going to do 60 gigabytes. Add tags. I'm going to give it a name tag. So in this case, let's see what I want to call the name. BWCE AMI single. Configuration group. So out of the box, it comes with SSH as the part of the security group. So it's open everywhere. Of course, you can limit this. It's just like a normal security group. You can change this to my IP if I want to, or a custom range if you need to as well. And then if you want to add other rules, you can do that as well. In this case, I'm just going to leave it the way it is. Hit review and launch. Oh, and it does not like this name. Why doesn't it like this name? I'm just going to delete the description. It may have been that it was over 255 characters. Security. Review and launch. And I'm just going to say I can look at everything. It looks good for now. Gives you a little estimate of the pricing as well, just a reminder of the unit pricing and such. And then once I've decided this, I just hit launch. I need to have a key bearer. So this is how you're actually going to be able to access your AMI that you create. So because we're going to be SSHing into it, you're going to need a key pair in order to actually access and enter this AMI. So if you have one already, you can just use an existing one. Just make sure you know where it is, because we'll be using it. And if you don't, you can create a new one. In this case, I'm just going to say choose existing key pair. I have a key pair already. I'm going to acknowledge and just hit launch instance. So this will actually launch my AMI for me. So if I go back, once it shows this, once it goes through this initiate launches window is done. So now it's done. So if I go to view instances, you'll see that it's popping up here. So I need to wait for this to actually finish initializing. So the status check needs to show 2 out of 2, and the instance state needs to be running. So if it's running but the status check hasn't been passed yet, it won't work. So you actually need to wait for that. So we'll give that a few minutes, and once that's done, we'll continue on. So now we see that the instance is running and that the status checks have been passed. So we actually want to now connect to our AMI. So in order to do this, we just click on our AMI, we click on connect, and it provides us some instructions on how to connect to this. You'll need a client that you can SSH from, so either being PuTTY or your terminal, and you'll need your key pair. So either it being something you just created or you had previously, you'll need to use that in order to actually SSH into your AMI. First thing you need to do is make sure that your key pair is not publicly viewable. If not, it won't work. You can do this with just the chmod 400s here in the instructions. You may need to do a sudo chmod depending on the permissions that whatever user you're logged in has right now. Then you look at the public DNS or the IP address of your instance, and you'll use that to connect to it. So I'm just going to copy this. This is an example, but copy this. It won't work. I'll talk a little about why and what we have to do to actually make it work. So if I go to my terminal, notice how I'm in my SSH folder. So this actually has my my key in here, and I'm just going to paste what I copied. And if I want to, I'm just going to root. So when the first time that you actually try to connect to it, it's going to ask you to, if you want to continue connecting, just say yes. And so we'll add it to your known host. So next time that you do it, it won't ask you. It'll just connect. So something about AWS or EC2 instances is that it'll always say root user within that page to connect to. But in a lot of times you need to use EC2 user, and that's the case also for this AMI. So all you have to do, and it says right there, please log in as the user, EC2 user. All you have to do is change root to EC2 user, and you should be able to log into your AMI. So now that you've logged in, you just do ls, you can see that there's one folder, it's a BWC folder. So if we go further into it, we'll see different folders that are available. So the first one that I want to look into is the BWC runtime folder. And so this contains, let's see, a zip file of the actual runtime that in order to build the Docker image that you'll be needing for your whatever application you want to deploy. So we'll be using this. Let me just actually copy it, or let me see what this. Okay, so I'm going to copy this. So we're going to need this path. So I'm going to just copy it. Backup one. Go into the BWC Docker folder, and within here you'll find a Docker file and a script. So we need to run the script to actually create the Docker image. So create Docker script, and then in order, if you run this, it's going to give you an error unless you add the path to this zip file. So in this case, it's going to be home EC2 user BWC runtime, and then the actual name of the zip file itself. So BWC runtime AWS 2.3.1.zip. And it's going to ask you if you want to override a folder. No, just hit no. So what it's going to do, it's going to take the base image. So it's going to take whatever this Docker file says. What it is that it's essentially, it just takes a Debian image. That's the base image for it. It's going to run through, and it's going to install a few things. It's going to run through a couple scripts. We'll see this in the terminals once it finishes building the context. So you notice Debian here. It has to download the actual library and such. So this can take a few seconds. But once it's added all of these, then you'll have your image available to be used when you run Docker images. So it's going to run, it's going to get updates and all the different packages it needs right now. So just give that a few moments. So now we see that it's finished. So it's successfully tagged. If we do Docker images, we'll see that our image is here. So this is the base Debian image that it uses. And then here's the actual BWC image, so created 7 seconds ago. So now you actually have access and the ability to deploy a BusinessWorks Container Edition app within this AMI. You just use this latest image and you actually build it from there. So now if I build a project from Studio, either being locally or wherever I have my business studio, I can set it where I actually use this repository. Let's say if you want to do it within the AMI itself. So let's say you want to do development within the AMI and you also want to deploy your images within the AMI itself. The Studio installer, so if you go to within the BWC folder, installers is actually here. So if you go to BWCE, you'll see that there is multiple zip files. So the one that we'll be interested in is Linux. So if we want to actually create or install our studio within our AMI itself, because we're going to want to use it within the AMI, it's just a matter of unzipping this and running the installer within there. So in the next video, I'm going to make it a bonus video where we're actually going to build a project in Studio. So I'm just going to use a local version of BusinessWorks Container Edition. Build a project, and I'm going to actually use the repository that's sitting on this AMI and deploy my project onto here. So I'm just going to access this image that I build my project, build it here, and we'll deploy it and see how it works. So we'll see you next time.